There is a version of you that hasn't been broken by the betrayal. A version of you who still stands tall. Even after the doors were slammed, even after the love was lost and the world went silent, there is a woman inside you who doesn't just survive the storm. She is the storm. And today you're not just here to be inspired. You're here to be transformed. Because by the time we reach the end of this message, you will not just walk like a woman. You will move like a force. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a power that lies dormant in every woman. A fire that the world often tries to tame before she ever learns how to wield it. It is the strength to stand up after the fall, to keep walking with grace when everything around her screams defeat. This power is not found in a single moment of triumph, but in the quiet and deliberate choices made every single day. Resilience, you see, is not a spontaneous miracle. It is a practice, a ritual, a commitment to continue even when you're tired, misunderstood, or walking alone. There is a story told about a young woman who trained in the Shaolin temple. She was not the strongest when she began. In fact, she was smaller than most, less flexible, and her strikes lacked the force of her fellow disciples. Yet every morning before sunrise, she was already on the training ground. Her movements were slow, deliberate, sometimes painful. She fell more times than she succeeded. But there was something remarkable about her. She never gave up. When others returned to rest, she practiced her stances under the cold moonlight. When others grumbled about pain, she listened to her breath, staying calm in discomfort. Over time, this woman didn't just improve. She transcended, not because she was gifted, but because she was devoted. She had learned the truth. Strength is not built in comfort. It is carved out of discipline. She became resilient not because life made her tough, but because she chose not to run from the struggle. She befriended it. And this is where resilience begins. To be an undefeatable woman, you must first understand that your greatest battles are not fought with your fists. They are fought within your own mind. It is the decision you make when you're rejected, to not collapse inward, but rise higher. It is the choice you make when you're left out, to not shrink your soul, but expand your self-worth. Many women mistake resilience as something dramatic, something visible, like standing tall after a breakup or walking away from a toxic job. But real resilience is far more subtle. It's saying no when people expect you to say yes. It's setting boundaries that make others uncomfortable, but protect your peace. It's waking up when the weight of the world is on your chest and choosing to breathe, to move, to try again. It is easy to confuse being busy with being strong. But business is not the same as groundedness. A woman who is truly resilient doesn't hustle for her worth. She understands that her value is not tied to her performance. Her strength is rooted in stillness, in awareness, in the way she can pause, reflect, and decide with clarity, not impulse. Think of the bamboo tree. When you plant it, it does not appear above the ground for nearly 5 years. You water it, nourish the soil, tend to it with hope, but nothing grows. To the untrained eye, it seems like a waste. But underneath the surface, the roots are growing deeper, stronger, wider. Then, in a matter of weeks, the bamboo shoots up over 80 feet tall. That is resilience, a quiet, often unseen process of becoming. Many will doubt you when they don't see immediate results. But you are not here for their applause. You are here to grow in silence so that you can rise in strength. But let us not confuse resilience with numbness. There is a type of woman who has mistaken emotional shutdown for strength. She walks through life guarded, armored in apathy, thinking that not feeling is the same as not breaking. But true resilience doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. It means mastering them. It means letting pain pass through you, not burying it. Because buried emotions become toxins. They seep into your decisions, your relationships, your self-image. To be resilient is to acknowledge your pain without being ruled by it. To feel your heartbreak, but still believe in love. To admit you're afraid, but still take the next step. This is the paradox of the undefeatable woman. She feels deeply, but she is not fragile. She is not afraid to cry, but she does not crumble. She bends, but she does not break. There's an old proverb that says, "The tree that does not bend with the wind will be broken by it." Flexibility, adaptation, These are the quiet companions of resilience. Life will not go as you planned. People will change. Circumstances will shift. You must become like water, fluid, adjusting, flowing through the cracks, not hardening against them. I once spoke with a woman who had gone through 2 divorces, battled breast cancer, and raised her children on her own while working 3 jobs. When I asked her how she kept going, she smiled, not with bitterness, but with clarity, and said, "Because I refuse to believe that my story ended there." This is what resilience sounds like. It is not loud. It is not boastful. It is simply a refusal to quit. A quiet insistence that life, no matter how difficult, will not define you. It will refine you, but resilience must be cultivated. It doesn't arrive with age or experience. It comes from the choices you make in the furnace of adversity. Are you willing to show up even when you don't feel seen? Are you willing to trust the process even when it hurts? Are you willing to keep your heart soft when the world tells you to grow cold? To answer yes to these questions is to step into the realm of the undefeatable. And once you begin to live from this place, something else begins to take root. Solitude. Not isolation, not exile, but the deep nourishing silence that solitude brings. And in this space, your soul begins to grow its own roots. You see, many women fear being alone because they've been conditioned to believe that their presence needs to be validated by others. But solitude is not a punishment, it is a portal. It is the place where you stop asking the world who you are and start answering that question for yourself. A woman who does not fear solitude is a woman who cannot be manipulated. She does not make decisions out of desperation. She is not swayed by flattery nor broken by rejection, because she knows I am whole even when I stand alone. There's a practice in Shaolin philosophy where students spend time in isolation, not to disconnect from the world, but to reconnect with themselves. In silence, they learn to listen not to noise, but to truth when the distractions fall away, when the expectations vanish. What remains is the essence of who you really are. It is in solitude that the undefeated woman is born, because she no longer hides behind the noise of performance. She no longer runs from the voice inside her. Instead, she listens, she learns, she evolves. One woman told me, after my divorce, I was terrified of being alone. The silence in my home used to feel like an accusation. But one day, I lit a candle, played soft music, and just sat with myself. At first, it was uncomfortable, but then I started to see the beauty in the quiet. I heard my own laughter. I started dancing in the kitchen. I realized I had never truly met myself. That is the gift of solitude. It introduces you to the woman you were too busy, too afraid, too distracted to see. And when you discover her, you begin to respect her. You begin to protect her peace. You stop allowing people to mistreat her, because you finally understand the treasure that she is. There is a great difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is a hunger for someone else to complete you. Solitude is the realization that you are already complete. Loneliness makes you chase shadows. Solitude allows you to embrace your light. So, take a walk by yourself. Sit in a cafe and drink tea with your own company. Write a letter to your younger self. Dance without an audience. Cry without shame. In these sacred moments, you are not missing anything. You are meeting everything you've been looking for. And in this stillness, you will begin to hear a deeper voice. One that doesn't shout, but whispers. One that doesn't command, but guides. It is your intuition, your inner wisdom, your original knowing. And this voice, if you learn to trust it, will lead you through storms you never thought you could survive. The undefeatable woman is not one who avoids pain or solitude. She embraces them. She sees in pain an opportunity for alchemy. She sees in solitude a sanctuary. She uses every experience as material for transformation, because she knows she is not defined by what happens to her, but by how she chooses to respond. Every day she decides, I will not shrink. I will not hide. I will rise. Not in arrogance, but in alignment. Not in bitterness, but in brilliance. She does not fear being alone, because she has already befriended herself. She does not beg for belonging, because she belongs to herself first. And in this knowing she becomes dangerous, not in a violent way, but in a powerful one. Because a woman who is no longer afraid to be alone is a woman who can never be controlled. She is free. She is full. She is undefeatable. There is a quiet danger in forgetting your own worth. It does not arrive loudly. It begins in whispers, in the small compromises you make because you want to be accepted. It creeps into your life when you apologize for things that require no apology. Your laughter, your ambition, your truth. And one day you wake up and realize that you've built your life around pleasing others while abandoning yourself. But there comes a moment, a sacred, piercing moment when a woman must decide to return to herself. Not as an act of rebellion, but as an act of remembrance. She does not have to become something new. She only has to remember who she was before the world told her who to be. The undefeatable girl is not the one who is perfect in every way. She is the one who, despite the world's attempts to dim her light, chooses again and again to recognize her own value. She does not look outward to measure her worth. She looks inward to the fire within and realizes that her presence alone is enough. This remembering begins when you no longer accept scraps of love just because you're afraid to eat alone. It begins when you no longer tolerate disrespect under the mask of loyalty. It begins when you stop shrinking to fit into spaces that were never designed to honor your fullness. A woman once told me, "I stayed in a relationship for years because he made me feel needed, but I confused being needed with being valued." This distinction is critical. Many women have been taught that their worth lies in how much they can give, how much they can fix, how much they can endure. But worth is not a currency you trade for validation. It is your inheritance. You were born with it. You don't earn it. And honoring your worth often means choosing the harder path, the lonely path, the misunderstood path. But it is the path that leads you back to yourself. There is a Japanese art called kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold. The cracks are not hidden, they are highlighted. Because the vessel is not seen as less valuable for being broken, it is seen as more beautiful for having survived. Your scars, your setbacks, your stories, they are not stains, they are gold seams. They are proof that you have been broken. Yes, but you have been healed with truth, one of the deepest forms of self. Worth is knowing when to walk away, not just from relationships, but from roles, beliefs, and identities that no longer reflect your growth. A woman cannot be undefeatable if she continues to live in environments that suffocate her. She must be willing to release the familiar in order to embrace the true. I met a woman in her late 50s who had spent decades in a career she did not love. She was brilliant, skilled, and deeply respected, but she was not alive inside. One day she decided to walk away. Friends called her foolish. Colleagues said she was too old to start over, but she began painting, a passion she had buried since her 20s. Now her work is displayed in galleries. But more importantly, she found her joy again. She told me, "I didn't start over. I started becoming." This is what it means to recognize your worth. It is not measured in titles, applause, or net worth. It is felt in the way you breathe in your own skin, in the way you no longer seek permission to exist, in the way you trust your own timing. Even when others don't understand your pace, the undefeatable woman does not wait for someone to choose her. She chooses herself. She doesn't need a stage to be powerful. Her power is not in performance. It is in presence. She knows that her value is not tied to who stays or who leaves. It is constant. It is sovereign. And from this place of self-acknowledgement, something extraordinary happens. She begins to transform pain into wisdom, not by erasing it, but by integrating it. Pain, after all, is not the enemy. It is the teacher. But only if you are willing to sit with it long enough to hear what it has to say. The transformation of pain is one of the most sacred journeys a woman can take. Because pain left unprocessed becomes projection. You begin to react to the present through the lens of the past. But when pain is faced with presence, it becomes your source of insight. There is a woman I deeply respect who grew up in a home filled with chaos and emotional abuse. For years, she wore a mask of strength, but behind it lived fear and self-doubt. She entered relationships looking for someone to fix what had been broken inside her. And each time she was left more shattered. But one day she did something radical. She stopped trying to fix herself and started listening to herself. She entered therapy. She journaled daily. She meditated not to escape, but to enter the storm within. And slowly she began to heal. Not perfectly, not quickly, but deeply. And she told me something I will never forget. My pain was not my prison. It was my path. This is the truth many never tell you. Your pain, when honored, becomes your portal to power. The woman who transforms her pain is the woman who becomes a guide not just for herself, but for others. She doesn't pretend life is easy. She doesn't wear a mask of perfection. She lives transparently, not for attention, but for liberation. There is an old Zen teaching: the obstacle is the path. And so it is. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the illness, the failure, they are not detours. They are the exact terrain through which your strength is forged. But you must walk it awake. Not in bitterness, but in awareness. Pain is not here to destroy you. It is here to reveal you, to strip away the illusions, the ego, the expectations, and to show you what cannot be shaken, your essence, your soul. One young woman, after surviving a traumatic experience, chose to speak publicly about her journey. She feared judgment, but instead she found connection. Her story became a bridge for others to begin their own healing. She said, "I used to think my story made me damaged. Now I know it makes me dangerous because I am no longer afraid of myself. This is what transformation looks like. It is not loud. It is not glamorous. It is slow, sacred, and deeply personal. But the result is undeniable. A woman who owns her story cannot be manipulated by shame. A woman who has met her own darkness is not afraid of the shadows in others. She leads not with authority, but with authenticity. And authenticity is not about sharing everything. It's about hiding nothing. It's about no longer pretending, no longer performing. It's about being so grounded in your truth that you no longer need to convince anyone of your value. From this place, the undefeatable woman begins to create, not just survive. She writes new narratives. She builds spaces that reflect her soul. She gives not from emptiness, but from overflow. And her life becomes her legacy, not because she chased it, but because she lived it. To know your worth and to transform your pain is to become not immune to struggle, but rooted in meaning. Not invincible, but intentional. It is the art of standing still in the storm. Not because the storm is over, but because you have found your center. And from this center she moves differently. She speaks differently. Her no becomes sacred. Her yes becomes powerful. She no longer needs to be everything to everyone. She is simply herself. And that is enough. Because she knows now more than ever that she was never meant to just survive. She was meant to rise, to expand, to awaken. Not in spite of the pain, but because of it. The way a woman protects her peace determines the clarity of her presence in this world. Peace is not a luxury reserved for days off or vacations in distant places. It is not the silence in a room, nor is it simply the absence of noise. Peace is the deep alignment between your inner world and your outer reality. It is the moment when what you believe, what you value, and how you live are no longer at war with each other. And for a woman who desires to become undefeatable, this alignment is non-negotiable. But what does it mean to protect your peace? It does not mean avoiding difficulty, retreating from responsibility, or living in denial of life's harsh realities. To protect your peace is to build a sacred boundary around the things that matter most to your soul. It is to honor your energy as a limited, powerful, and deeply personal resource. It is to wake up every morning and ask, what am I carrying today that does not belong to me? So many women carry burdens they were never meant to hold. The opinions of others, the unmet expectations of family, the weight of cultural norms that diminish their light, and somewhere along the line, they begin to internalize the noise of the world as their own voice. But when you do not protect your peace, your identity becomes confused with your environment. You start to react rather than respond. You start to survive instead of live. Imagine a garden. If it is not protected, weeds will grow. Not because the garden is weak, but because nature is indiscriminate. Life, like nature, is full of distractions, demands, and disruptions. And unless you cultivate the soil of your life with intention, something or someone else will do it for you. This is why protecting your peace is not selfish. It is sacred stewardship. I remember meeting a woman in her early 30s who worked in a high-pressure corporate environment. She was praised for her performance, but behind her accomplishments was exhaustion. Every day, she poured herself out to meet impossible expectations, fueled by the belief that being busy meant being valuable. It wasn't until she experienced a severe burnout that she paused long enough to ask, "Who am I when I am not producing?" In her recovery, she learned something profound. Peace is not found in doing more. It is found in doing what aligns. She began to say no, not with guilt, but with grace. She carved out time each morning to sit in silence, to listen to her breath, to feel the ground beneath her feet. She shifted her focus from achieving to arriving. And slowly she began to feel whole, not because her world had changed, but because she had chosen to change how she showed up in it. The undefeatable woman does not wait for peace to be given. She creates it. She defends it. She rebuilds it every day. She understands that inner chaos will always echo louder than outer success. So she tends to her spirit like a gardener tends to soil, with patience, with consistency, and with love. Protecting your peace means choosing who has access to your energy. Not everyone who wants your time deserves your presence. Not every conflict needs your engagement. Not every invitation requires your acceptance. There is wisdom in strategic silence, in choosing stillness over reaction, and in recognizing that not every storm requires your attendance. There was once a story about a young monk who asked his master, "How do I remain calm when everything around me is in chaos?" The master poured tea into the monk's cup until it overflowed. The monk exclaimed, "Stop, it's too much." The master said, "Exactly. This is your mind when you allow too much in." The monk learned that protecting peace is not about controlling the outside world. It is about managing what you allow inside. For women especially, this lesson is often hard won. We are taught to be available, agreeable, accommodating. We are rewarded for our sacrifice and praised for our silence. But a woman cannot be undefeatable if she is constantly depleted. You cannot light the way for others if your own flame is extinguished. Boundaries are not barriers. They are bridges to balance. And these boundaries are not only for people, they are for thoughts, habits, and distractions. Protecting your peace might mean turning off your phone when you feel overwhelmed. It might mean unfollowing accounts that trigger comparison. It might mean sitting with your discomfort instead of numbing it with business or noise. Because peace is not the absence of struggle. It is the presence of awareness. A woman I once coached had spent most of her life reacting to everything around her. If someone was angry, she felt responsible. If someone was sad, she tried to fix it, but she never asked herself what she needed. When we began working together, I asked her to keep a peace journal. Every time she felt anxious, frustrated, or drained, she wrote down what was happening, who was involved, and how she responded. After just 2 weeks, a pattern emerged. She realized that 80% of her stress came from just a few people and situations. And more importantly, she realized that her peace was not being taken. It was being given away. With this awareness, she began to shift. She had hard conversations. She set limits.